Good day, everyone. We're going to explore a bit of brainwave states. As I mentioned in my previous video about the conscious and subconscious mind. And this is just to explain to you certain aspects of how the mind and the body works. When I had a lot of questions for God or for Dad, as I call him, as an engineer, I really wanted to understand certain aspects. So if you like understanding, this might be for you. If you don't like understanding and you just believe, that's great. Then don't listen to this. You don't need it. But I wanted to be very practical. I like stuff that's practical and I like implementable solutions. I'm not about vanity metrics. So I really asked God, how does this work? There's a lot of scriptures about renewing your mind. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Don't be double-minded. If the two make peace in this house. If you ask anything in my name, labor to enter that rest. I didn't really understand what that looks like and how to appropriate it. The issue with that is that if we think about, sorry, I'm just getting that video up again. If we just read scriptures, and we've been reading it for thousands of years, and let's just say in the last how many years you've been alive, and we don't really see the impact of it, and we don't see real change, we need to start asking ourselves, what are we missing? Something? Are we missing interpretation for it? Or are we just saying words and repeating scriptures just because we think it's the right thing to do? In any case, one of the stuff that God led me to understand is how the brain works. And there's a couple of things I want to mention here. And the first section would be brainwave states. So you've got a couple of brainwave states, and each of them have a specific property and indicates a specific state of being that you are currently living in. You start off with beta. And then you've got alpha. And then you've got theta. And then you've got delta. Explain that quickly. So what beta is, you get high range beta and low range or mid range beta. Now, beta is basically a waking state. That is what you are if you're quite alert. If you're quite alert, that's when you're sitting in a meeting and you need to focus, or you're working towards a deadline, or you're in hectic traffic. That's sort of, and you need to be very vigilant. That's sort of what high range beta is. The high range or beta in general is basically your very alert awake state, but it also is synonymous with your survival state. So survival state means that you are very aware of the outer world. You need to see something, you need to scan your environment. You can't really be at rest. If you think about a deadline, in the old days, it would have been a lion that chases us, but now it's sort of a deadline and it's lurking, it's around the corner. So you almost need to be very sure in a meeting that's tough. You need to be aware of everybody's emotions, their facial expressions, so it's almost it's a non-restful state, and it's a very survival state. And we generally try to focus to the outside world to scan the environment for danger and to best prepare ourselves. As soon as we start dropping to alpha, alpha is the awake but alert, awake state, but you're not in a survival state. So in alpha, you start entering a relaxed state. So if you think of when you're very relaxed, or when you are showering in the morning and all the ideas start to pop up and you're like, everybody always says like, get the best ideas in the shower. That's typically where we enter an alpha brainwave stage. So why is alpha important and why do you get that stuff when you're in the shower? Because high range beta is typically limited thinking. You're not very connected to your subconscious mind. You're all just in sort of, I think it's the prefrontal cortex, and everything is sort of survival. So you work with that, again, to my previous one, you work with that very limited 50 bits per second processor, and your focus is mainly on the environment and scanning for danger. As soon as that drops a bit, you're in a shower, you're relaxed, you know nothing's going to happen. There's nice warm water, you know, it's over your head. You start relaxing your body and you drop into an alpha. Now, a lot of this subconscious type of thinking and the stronger processing, all the stuff that you thought about in the previous day or hours can now start surfacing because you're not afraid of that tiger out there. You don't have to focus on him. So that's the alpha brainwave state. Theta is that sort of twilight stage when you just before you fall asleep. When you're trying to stay awake, but you're starting to fall asleep, that's sort of when you hit theta. And that's where your mind starts wandering. You're going off to places, you're seeing stuff. It's very, and this is synonymous with the imagination stage, imagination brainwave state. So this is where you can dream up, different colors, a different world. You can imagine stuff. And again, you're there because you move from beta down through alpha into theta at this point. It means your body needs to be sort of relaxed and calm. You're not at the point where you're fearing that animal out there, so you're not super alert. You don't have a deadline that you're stressing on at that moment. You don't have to focus on a lot of stuff. So that is why you're actually allowed to enter that stage where you really use imagination. You have your imagination the whole time, but you're not really using it. You're not really accessing it most of the time because of the fact that you are in your waking state mostly stressed. And then we get into the delta stage. Oh, the last thing I want to say, theta. Theta also when the first 15 minutes or something when after you wake up. So when you wake up in the morning, you just like wake up and you're not fully aware of your day. You're not fully stressing about getting to work yet. You're sort of just lying there. That is also where theta happens. And then delta is obviously your sleep state. So this is where you're very slow brainwave. You're sleeping and you're basically unconscious. Now, again, if you just talk about brainwaves, this is typically a faster brainwave state, and then this is very slow. So it goes from fast down to slow. Now, let's just also explain, why this brainwave states are important. If you think about babies from that they are born up to the stage they're about 2 years old, they are predominantly in. Now, why are they in delta? Delta is the place where you're basically completely open to the subconscious. You are in a downloadable state. You are basically just downloading. So not using your imagination, you're just receiving information from the world around you and you're downloading it. And when you think about it, a baby needs to become from entering this world to 2 years old, they basically learn everything that it is to be human. And that's quite amazing if you think about it in 2 years. Learn how to move, to walk, perception, depth. They learn how to use their voice. They learn how to eat. They learn how to start speaking. So all of that basically, and then from 2 years old, it's just getting better at doing all of that stuff. But everything to be able to be a human, a functioning human, happens in those first 2 years. And that is why the delta brainwave state is so important and why they're in there. So they just downloading. They are waking up and they're observing you, they're observing the world, they're observing their parents, and they're just getting information in. They can't do anything yet. They're just lying there, but they're just downloading. And that is why they can learn it so quickly. Sometimes we wonder why it's so difficult later in life to learn stuff and kids pick up it's so quickly. It's because they're in a very programmable state. Now, the next one, so let's say it is from 1 to 2 years, or 0 to 2 years, actually. Theta is from 2 to 7. Let's call it that. So a child generally is in theta brainwave state, mostly between the ages 2 and 7. So they're not fully conscious yet. That's sometimes why we get frustrated with children, because we expect them to use executive logic. We expect them to be very analytical. And we wonder why they do certain stuff the way they do it, and they don't focus and they don't think the way we want them to think. Is because we operate mostly in beta at that stage, and they're not there. They're not in that brainwave state. They're in theta. That's why imagination is so wild for them. That is why they're so that's why they could imagine. You can tell them about Santa Claus, they'll believe in Santa Claus. You'll tell them about the tooth fairy, and they'll believe in the tooth fairy because everything is imaginary. If they put on the Batman suit, they don't believe they have a Batman suit on as a children's play. They actually believe they're Batman and they're running around, so they're in that imagination state. This is where theta lives, and it's a very powerful state. And also, I think that is, we'll get to that, but that's also a, Jesus, unless you become like one of these children or these little children, you will not see the kingdom. You know, that almost says like, yes, you can't really see the kingdom if you operate in this stressed environment. You need to sort of drop down to being a child, in those days, they didn't know about brainwave states. Being a child, opening up your imagination, and then you'll be able to start seeing what the kingdom is like, because it is outside of this five senses world. It is a higher reality. And that's also, if you think about it, if a child is in 2 to 7 years old, they're also in a non-stress state. They don't have to provide for their food. They don't have to worry about the future. They don't have to worry about the roof about their heads. They don't really worry about tomorrow. And that is why time usually feels so long when you're a kid, because you're very present. You're in theta, you're in imagination, and you're very present. You're not really worrying about what you did yesterday, like we do as adults, or condemning ourselves for yesterday. You're also not worrying about the future, what you should be doing, or the chores that needs to be done, or that thing that needs to be handed in next day. You're very present. And that's why time also feels long. If you want to know why it felt longer when you were a child, and now you're saying you're 30 and time just gets faster, put your hand on a stove that's hot. 5 seconds will be very long, but it's because you're very present. That's the understanding. Now, them being in that non-stress state environment, and Jesus saying, if you become like these little children, you will see the kingdom. There's also another verse that says, labor therefore to enter that rest. Now, this sort of state of theta or childlike state, you can also be almost translated. Again, I'm not saying this is exactly how it works. This is how Dad explained it to me. You listen to the Spirit, you do your own thing. But this could be where you labor to enter that rest, because in rest you are open and your imagination is there, and then you can start perceiving what's going on in the kingdom and the Spirit, and you can bring that truth back, and you can start very effective mind renewal. And I'll also explain why mind renewal is difficult if we don't enter rest. So another thing what I want to say about 2 to 7 is because they're very downloadable state still. So they're more aware than Delta. They're not really sleeping, but they are very downloadable. And this is where most of your whole life has determined. The way you are typically at your 40s has been determined between the ages of 2 and 7, because that's where you learn all the aspects of life. That's where your parents, the parent A would tell certain children A that life is difficult, life is hard, it's difficult to make money, and rich people are evil. That person is 40 years old. They're working very hard for very little, and they're always saying that if other people get ahead, they always have something to say about it. Yeah, but it's difficult for rich people to enter heaven, or they must be fraudulent or stealing, or they have luck, but the luck will run out. That is not really you speaking. That's your subconscious programming telling you that being abundant and wealthy is evil because it has been programmed into you at that stage and that age, and you don't even know that. So it changes your perception about life in your world. Now, parent B is a very successful parent, and they say they firstly let the child grow up in abundance, and secondly, they encourage it. They say, listen, anything you you dream up, you can do. Remember, there's more than enough in the world. Um, you know, everything presents an opportunity, and you wonder why that child B might not have the degrees you have, might not even have put in the same effort you have, but they get the promotion, they get the lucky breaks, they get all that. And it's not because they are better, it's not because God favors them more, it's not because of any of those things. It's just because the subconscious mind has been programmed with the wrong side of the knowledge of good and evil, and it doesn't produce life. So that children B then gets ahead in life, and you sometimes wonder, or sometimes people, it's very easy for certain people to believe certain truths and other people not. It's also because that programs that they've been programmed with is very conducive to that new piece of information that they absorbing. Okay, not going to spend too much time in alpha, and then obviously beta. Now, the problem with beta, if you're in high range beta, what happens to your body physically is your body literally thinks it needs to survive. It needs to go, go, go. It needs to survive. And this is why this culture of go, 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 survive, 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 hustle, 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 it's not very healthy. And it's not good for you, and it will not help you to enter rest. If your body feels like it's there, what it does, it deprioritizes taking the energy and the blood flow from your internal organs that's there supposed to service it, to maintenance and for growth and repair, and it pushes it more to extremities. And that is for the reason that if a tiger is trying to fight you, it's not a time to work on replenishing your digestive system and fixing your gut. It is a time to either fight them or to run away or to make sure that you can build some or other shelter. So you need the arms, you need the energy in your legs, you need to be run. That's where it is. So you're not in a restful state. Now, if you drop into alpha and theta, it's very healthy states of mind, because your body, you can't be in alpha and theta if you're in stress state. So if you drop into those states, all of a sudden what your body says is, listen, I don't have a danger anymore. So I don't have to push all of my energy to the extremities. I can actually push it to the internal organs, and I can start servicing and repairing the body. This is why high range beta is the survival sort of state, and then from alpha lower, it's the growth and repair state. Growth and repair. And that's why rest in general is so important. That's why not stressing in general is so important. I think that's also why I gave you my peace. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. Take my burden, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. I wish above all things that you prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. That's another good verse. If you think about it, it says, I wish above all things that you prosper, firstly, and be in health, body. So prosper financially, relationally, etc. Health, body, even as your soul prospers. So that basically says, it should be manifesting in your prosperity and in your health as your soul prospers. So what needs to really change, and what needs to be renewed to this truth for prosperity and health to manifest effortlessly? It's your soul. Now, this is exactly where mind renewal comes in. So all of this I'm telling you now is to say that, listen, be aware that this world and the enemy has designed this world specifically and very well thought out to keep you in beta and high range beta almost all of the time. It nukes you with stimulants. If you feel down, you start eating unhealthy, which also pushes you in your body into stress state and high and beta. You drink 15 coffees, which also pushes you again up to beta. If you're stressed at work, you're stressed in traffic, you're stressed when you get home. Even when you get home, there's so many lights like this one in my face now actually that tells your body, listen, hey, it's not time to rest, it's time to be active and go. The day is still on. We listen to music or something constantly, so there's almost no place where we say, okay, listen, we can just relax. And that's why it's very important to know that we need to sort of allow ourselves to first realize that it's okay. This is just how the world's created it, and it's done it for a specific reason. But secondly, upon identifying it, now we can labor, therefore, to enter rest. And I think that's why the word says labor, therefore, because that's the only labor you need to do. There is no labor to get from God. You already have everything from God. Christ is in you. All promises are yes and amen. But it happens, not only, it flows naturally like rivers of living water, just every second of every day if you're in rest. So that's why I said like labor therefore to enter that rest. And why we said labor is to get from beta down to alpha to theta. That could be difficult sometimes. If you're in the middle of a stressful day and I tell you just enter rest, you're going to be like, wow, that's quite difficult. I don't exactly know how to do it. I can't relax now. I still have this to do. I have a meeting in 2 hours time I need to prep for. And that's why almost I said that's the labor part. It's not that necessarily you have to work for it. It's just because your body and the environment being in survival doesn't want to let go of it because it feels unsafe. So it will try to force you to stay in that stress state and not enter rest. And that's where the labor part comes in. The last thing I want to say about this, so Theta is such a beautiful place to be, like, and that's why I believe it's so very important first thing in the morning, to just start renewing your mind as soon as you wake up with the truth. Don't switch on your phone immediately. Don't check your emails. Don't do that stuff first thing in the morning while you're still in that state. Just let the Spirit baptize you with the truth of Christ, with light and life and love and peace and joy, righteousness, peace and joy in the Holy Spirit. And as soon as you go to bed, don't go to bed fighting or with a TV in your face or all that kind of stuff. Get into a place where you can start switching off and rest. And then also, again, just enjoy your dad's love. Just take from your dad's table. Just eat this truth, like my previous video. Take from him. And that will start effortlessly rewiring and renewing your mind. The last interesting thing that I want to say is there's another brainwave state here at the top, which they call gamma. Now, this is an interesting one. Gamma is like an euphoric state. That is almost where you're like, I don't know if you've ever felt it, but you feel like you're so happy, so in love with life, that you almost feel like you want to burst out of your skin. You feel like you're vibrating. You're almost going to float off the ground. I think it's almost like being in love times 10, that type of feeling that all of a sudden, and everything feels possible and you feel so free. That's a gamma state. And that happens very seldomly because you would think because gamma is faster than beta, you almost have to go from beta up towards gamma to achieve that euphoric state and total bliss, and surrender and trust. But what happens with all the tests they've done? Nobody ever entered it from beta up to gamma. What they needed to do is they needed to drop down from beta to alpha to theta. And then when they reach theta and they're in a relaxed and a rest state, labor therefore to enter that rest, all of a sudden, they shot up to a gamma brainwave state.